call the City Council Urban Affairs and Housing Committee meeting to order. It's February 9th. We're starting a little late. We have 2 items on our agenda. I'm going to take them out of order for how they're listed on the agenda that was posted. So we're going to go with order number 22-108-741, a special permit application by Attorney Falk on behalf of Octo 48 LLC, doing business as Action Precision Machining, to convert a pre-existing non-conforming warehouse use to a machine shop at 269 Mechanic Street. I believe we have Attorney Falk and the potential owner of the property, Mr. Monjo. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Attorney Falk, if you have anything you want to tell us over and above what we already know?
Sure. Thank you. So we had our public hearing on December 19th. We submitted a draft decision with conditions. We met with the site plan committee on January 26th to review those conditions. You should have a copy of the draft decision and conditions in your materials. Just a refresher, this building is at 269 Mechanic Street. It's been the site of commercial operations since the early 1900s. George's father actually operated a business from this building many years ago. It was rezoned from limited industrial to Residence B in 2019 in anticipation of a residential project that never took effect. So the property is pre-existing non-conforming as a warehouse use right now, most recently used by DN Van Lines until May of 2022 when George bought the property. So George will be operating his machine shop, a tool and die operation within the existing building. This is a little different than the usual special permits the council sees. This is what they call a Section 6 finding special permit to modify a pre-existing non-conforming use from one pre-existing non-conforming use to another. And the legal standard is that the council may grant the special permit upon finding that the new use is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming use. We believe the council can make that finding because George's use will actually be less detrimental to the neighborhood. His use will have a lower impact. The prior warehouse use involved numerous trucks coming and going throughout the day. George's operation is, essentially standard business hours, 6 to 12 employees, 2 or 3 deliveries per week on smaller sized trucks. Overall, the operation would be, we believe, less detrimental than the existing use. And that existing use could continue. It could be resumed at any time. This change would essentially lock in George's use, and any further changes would have to get another special permit from the council. And just closing, we had gotten 3 letters of support from abutting property owners, the folks most immediately affected by George's operation, who are in full support of the use, including the owner of the properties on either side of the driveway. Some concerns that were raised at the public hearing, we believe are fairly well addressed in the draft decision and the conditions, in particular our condition on limitation of operations with respect to hours and where deliveries would take place.
Thank you. And I am sorry, I had all my papers when I was at home and I don't have them now, so I'm going to have to go off what I have on my computer, which is the grant of special permit. I'm going to open it up to committee members to see if they have questions. We are missing Councilor Doucette, who is a member of the Urban Affairs Committee. We have other councilors that are here. Any councilors from Urban Affairs with questions, concerns before we get into details? Any other councilors with questions or concerns? Okay. So we have the draft grant of special permit that was given to us. It's pretty straightforward with all of the findings of facts that were just gone over. The actual language that we have, we did get a notice from Priscilla Ryder about a addition to this that they wanted to add into. So it is in the new copy that we have. It's on page 3, under site plan review, where basically the conditions are construction in accordance with applicable laws. The addition is the issuance of a special permit is further subject to detailed site plan review by the Site Plan Review Committee in accordance with the City of Marlborough Site Plan Review Ordinance prior to the issuance of the building permit. Any additional changes, alterations, modifications, or amendments as required during the process of site plan review shall be further conditions attached to the building permit, and no occupancy permit shall be issued until the applicant has complied with all conditions. Subsequent site plan review shall be consistent with the conditions of this special permit, and the plans submitted, reviewed, and approved by the City Council as a special permit granting authority. The rest of this is, the incorporation of submissions is pretty standard. The operations lists that the hours will be Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I guess my question I will throw out to the committee, when we had the public hearing, there was concern from one of the letters that was read into the record, and I believe the response from the applicant was that Saturdays would be very rare. Do we want to either not allow Saturday or to clarify somehow about the Saturday so that Saturday are less hours? Anybody have concerns, questions? Councilor Landers?
My feeling on that, maybe have no deliveries on Saturday.
Yep, that's no
That would be
problem.
the trucks coming in and out, a small pickup truck or a van. But I think as far as 6 to 12 employees coming in on Saturday, they probably don't want to be there to begin with, but they would come in and do their work and get the hell out of there.
Right, and I would guess, you've got the hours, but if you're saying that you're not typically a Saturday person, then my guess is you're paying some overtime hours if you're doing it.
Honestly,
so-
it's usually me on Saturday.
There you go. All right, so we can add in that clarification that there'll be no deliveries on Saturday? Is that?
Yep.
You can come up with wording. I know this will have to go to the solicitor anyway. And then I wondered if anything more specific on the sign. I know there was a question when the sign that was put out in front was there before anything happened. Then we were shown the sign that the prior owners had, so I think everybody has copies of those. And I actually didn't look up to see what the sign ordinance says. It could mean that you could have a rather large sign. I kind of like the one that you hung, that was the post on the chain mail, whatever,
Yep.
hanging down. I liked that. I don't know if that was your plan to put that
Yep.
back up.
Yep.
Madam Chair, if I may, there's a provision in the sign ordinance that allows a limited size and number of signs for businesses that are pre-existing non-conforming in a residential zone. So it's not, the fact that you're a business doesn't mean that you get to put up the size and number and types of signs that you might in a commercial zoning district. There is a limitation. And I took a look, the sign George shouldn't have put up when he did, I believe would comply with the sign ordinance, so that type of, for this type of use in a residential zone.
All right, and
I
is there
don't need
language?
anything.
Could-
We could even say that it could be small. I'm fine with that. It just need people to be able to know that I'm there. Because it
Yeah.
is behind other properties, so it's hard. A lot of people can't, like, where's your building?
Right, because I think the sign was at the entrance off of Mechanic, right? Which
Right.
makes sense that
Right. And that's
there's
all.
no other way to get there unless you're walking from the rail trail on. I don't know if there's a way to clean up the sign that was taken of what was there and have that as
It's
an
already been
exhibit?
taken down.
No, but I think there's a picture of it.
Of the old one?
No, the one you put up.
Yeah, I can take that down.
But we have a picture, I think it's part of the
It's
packet.
in the packet, Madam Chair, I'm just.
Can that get used as an exhibit? This sign will be? Or is that,
So to modify so you're saying condition number 6, signs, right now, signage at the site shall comply with the city's sign ordinance. And the intent of referencing that was to clarify that, we're bound by the sign ordinance with respect to signs for a pre-existing non-conforming business in a residential zone. I mean, I suppose we could amend that condition, you know, something along the line, substantially the same as the sign attached as Exhibit B, and have a picture of that sign.
Does that work for committee to make sure that we, or at least give us an example? And if you already have that sign and you're going to put it back up, that's fine. And then, let's see, I guess I was given a copy of, that's what I get for not having my notes. Site plan review was actually an additional sentence after what I read. So back to number 2. The additional sentence is, site plan review shall consider, among other things, the adequacy of the site's existing driveway for the use, options to improve drainage behind the building in the vicinity of the rail trail, options for visual improvements along the rail trail, including plantings, and options to improve screening for abutting properties. And I assume that you're aware of all of those. Okay,
Yep.
so that'll be added into this when we get it in final form. So let's see, turn my page here. Number 7 is the noise and air quality, which just really says they have to comply with the city noise ordinance. And number 8 is the recording of the decision. I didn't know, sometimes we have language about snow removal, and I don't know if it got discussed at site plan, if that's one of the things that they'll add in when they do their review. You've got, I would assume, room to store the snow on site. You're not going to need to use up all of those places. If it was a smaller, I would say there might be language to have the snow removed, but I think you'll be okay. And I'm okay with letting site plan delineate where that snow storage will be, I guess, is part of that. Is that okay with everybody else? All right, anything that I am missing that anybody else wants to discuss? All right, we're okay timing-wise. I think if I can report this out and suspend to have this referred to legal so it's in proper form, then we could vote on it on the 27th. So we would get there by our deadline and won't need to ask you for an extension. So if everybody's okay with voting on this tonight, I could take a motion from someone. Counselor
Madam
Landers?
Chair, I will make the motion to approve.
Okay,
Special permit.
to approve the decision, draft decision as amended.
Okay.
And then on Monday, I'll report out, I'll ask for a suspension to refer to the solicitor. All right, there's been a motion made and seconded to approve the draft decision as amended. Is there further discussion? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, all right. So that takes care of, thank you very much
Great,
for,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
sorry about my disorder here. I hate that. Is this your copy, Karen? I wrote it on mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Set? What?
Okay. Speak. The second item on our agenda is order number 22-100-8709, which is an application for a special permit from attorney Terrence Morris on behalf of 272 Lincoln Street LLC to build a 12-unit multifamily dwelling with accessory parking to be located at 272 Lincoln Street. I believe Attorney Morris is here now, and anybody else that wants to come up into the well is welcome. We have and I believe we're being handed out some new documents that were referenced in the information that we received right, so again, for this one, we do have a time extension that was approved at our last council meeting to March 28th. Hopefully, we won't need that. Everybody has a revised draft special permit. You have the comments from Site Plan Review Committee, and everybody has the minutes from the public hearing. So I'll let you begin if you have anything you want to say before we start going through this.
Well, Madam Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to be back here before the committee, and I see a number of other councilors who are here as well. Expressed great interest in this project, and hopefully are as excited about it as we are. We went through site plan review coordinated by Priscilla Ryder, and it was quite helpful. There were a number of minor changes to the site plan. We had some pinch points with the parking, which we have corrected. But apart from that, there was very few other changes. We've distributed, the clerk has distributed copies, revised copies of a full set of both the architectural set of plans and the civil set of plans. And we are hopeful that once you've had an opportunity to review the you'll see very few changes from what we had submitted at the public hearing, other than what I've pointed out. We've increased the setbacks in certain locations, but apart from that, it's essentially as presented. So we're here now really to answer any questions that the members may have, councilors may have, and
All right, so Attorney Morris, just for your information, I know Councilor Doucette is not here. I'm the Chair of Urban Affairs. Councilor Doucette is the Vice Chair. Councilor Wagner is a member of Urban Affairs. Councilor Landers and Councilor Navin. So we will be the ones who will be voting on this tonight, and then I'll make, or if not tonight, at a future meeting, but I hope tonight. And then I will be reporting out, and then the rest of the body will be the ones voting on this. So I'm going to just go through quickly. We did receive some comments from the Site Plan Review Committee that were sent to us, and I just want to read the letter that she wrote, or the email. At its December 13th, 2022 Site Plan Review Committee meeting, the committee reviewed the special permit plans before you for 272 Lincoln Street, a 12-unit multifamily dwelling. A revised plan was provided after this meeting to address the site distance and sidewalk issue, which is titled Proposed Multifamily 272 Lincoln Street, and last date revised 2/2/23, which I believe is what you gave us tonight. Overall, the committee was pleased with this development design, layout, and landscaping concept presented. We are also pleased to know that this will be a carbon-free, net-zero development. This project will require a full site plan review once it receives a special permit from City Council. The committee will flesh out specific details on the site design and mechanics at that time. We've also reviewed the draft special permit conditions and note that these now incorporate comments we had on crosswalk painting and traffic site distance. We had only 2 suggested changes as follows. Replace C9 with the following. As part of the site construction, the traveled way of Cashman Street should be widened to the extent possible along the site frontage instead of the addition of a sidewalk. Final details shall be approved by the city engineer. And those are actually in the amended draft that we got. What's not in there is add an additional condition which conveys the following. The existing billboard on the property is to be removed to construct this project. This special permit does not allow for any billboards to be placed on this property in the future. Let us know if you have any questions or comments on the above, or if you need one of us to attend the meeting. On behalf of the Site Plan Review Committee, Priscilla Ryder. So I'm going to just get right into the draft grant of special permit unless any councilors have questions beforehand. I think it's probably easier to go through this and have questions as we go along. So I think I will start on page 1, which is really the backside of all of that formal language. And I noted in the findings of facts number 5, I think we need to make an amendment, and I'm sure that the city solicitor will make sure we're doing this correctly. But it talks about in the middle of number 5, where it says, the proposed multifamily development for 272 Lincoln Street, Marlborough, dated September 12th, 2022. I think we need to add in after that, as further amended on February 2nd, 2023, consisting of the locus map, street views, parking level, floor plans, and building elevations, renderings, and perspectives, and then delete approved by the site plan committee on December 22nd, and then leave the rest of it in accordance with the rules and regulations promulgated by the city council. Does that all sound okay with you and committee members? All right, number 2 just continues with the findings of facts, which are just the basic describing the site, where it's located, talks about the public hearing. Then we get to the conditions, which start on page 3. The typical construction in accordance with applicable laws, site plan review. If I go too fast, yell at me to stop if you have questions or comments. The modifications of the plans, which say that the city council or the site plan review committee may approve engineering plans that do not change the use of approved herein or materially increase the impervious use of the area, reduce the green area, alter traffic flow, or increase the size of the buildings. Number 4 is the incorporation of the submissions, so everything we've got is part of the record. Number 5 is the stormwater and erosion control management, which is pretty standard language. Number 5 is lighting, which is the exterior lighting is downward facing and shielded to minimize impacts on neighboring properties. Number 7 is screening for abutters, where it's saying the applicant shall install solid fencing and/or appropriate vegetated landscaping along the eastern side lot line of the site to screen areas of the site used for parking and driveways from adjacent properties, and shall maintain the fencing in good repair. The fencing shall comply with the requirements of all applicable city ordinances. Number 8 is the crosswalk painting. Prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for the use or at such later time, if authorized by the city engineer, the applicant, its successors and/or signs shall repaint the crosswalk of the Assabet River Rail Trail on Lincoln Street and Cashman Street in a manner approved by the city engineer. And I guess I'm okay with that, but I personally wonder about that some later time, because it does say issuance of the occupancy permit, which is probably going to be 1.5 to 2 years down the line. So that crosswalk gets worn, as all of their crosswalks do. So if they don't have you painted right at the occupancy, but they decide 3 years later that it's worn and now they want you to paint it, I don't know, does that bother anybody else, the vagary of such later time?
We're willing to accept a friendly amendment that actually establishes a time
Can we add
beyond the
like a-
occupancy permit.
within, I don't know, I'm not sure, is it really a big deal? Counselor Nabin, come on.
Well, I have an idea.
Oh, sorry, he's looking like,
No, yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid point, Madam Chair. You know, this area gets quite a bit of traffic, as we all know, and people coming down the hills are flying, and it is already very challenging to have some sight lines. So I think something specific would make it a little bit more palatable, probably for everybody. I mean, nobody wants to have any concerns in that area.
I don't know if prior to the issuance of occupancy permit, that's still going to be 1.5 to 2 years. I don't know if there's a way to put money in to then paint it 2 years after that. I mean, I don't even know how much it costs. Counselor Landers.
I'm surprised that this is in here, because the city does a pretty good job, spring particularly, going around doing crosswalks, doing that. And I believe these crossings for the rail trail and the markings, especially down by the old IC school and down to the IC church, you know, they're less than a year old, and they haven't stood up well. And maybe the second coat will do it. So I think they have to be redone, probably by the city or part of the contract that did the rail trail to begin with. They have to be done before I can move into this place.
And I know that they're done differently than the other crosswalks are. There's special paint and special line stuff that's done, so I understand how they would want them to do this with the assumption that all the traffic of the trucks would do some wear and tear. I'd almost rather just get rid of "or at such later time." Counselor Ossing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So
Indulge.
if you go to the Railside Terrace over on Ash Street, right? So we had a condition, and I'll go find it if you'd like. They had to paint it before and they just painted it, what, 6 months ago, I think?
Well, didn't they paint it when they paved?
Well, maybe it was after whenever they paved Ash Street or.
They paved Ash Street.
But
when they
anyway,
painted it.
but the point is, I believe they're done, all right? This isn't, it now becomes this, you guys paint it once, or figure out, pay someone to paint it, whatever you do, and then it becomes the city's responsibility to maintain it, because it's, you know, I mean, I'll go look right now while you're talking for what the
Okay.
words were, but I believe it was a one and done over on Ash Street, so I'm not sure why we treat
So
this.
if we just got rid of that "or at such later time,"
I agree with that, they're just prior occupancy permit.
prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for the use, the applicant, so get rid of "or at such later time if authorized by the city engineer." Does that work for
Chair, I don't
you?
understand why it can't simply be, we don't get the occupancy permit unless we do it. Then it's done at the time that the door is open for occupancy.
Well, I think it's just sort of, that's a checklist for the building commissioner to know he's not going to do it until you paint it, so that's probably standard language.
Okay.
But it just means now that you only have to do it once, and that's when you do it, so that you're aware. Counselor Wagner, sorry, I'm looking
Madam
this way.
Chair, that would mean, I'd support removing that, but then this continues the language, successes shall repaint. So wouldn't we want to take that out too? Because it does, I mean, that's how I understand it. The original one will be done, but then it's the city's job. So if we're going to get rid of at a later date,
Yeah, all right, okay, so prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for the use, the applicant shall paint, so get rid of its successors and assigns, so that's how it would read. Prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for the use, the applicant shall repaint the crosswalk of the Assabet River Rail Trail on Lincoln Street and Cashman Street. That work for everybody?
So you would take out also the phrase, if authorized by the city engineer, that goes out as well.
Yes. And the part of its successors and assigns.
Madam Chair?
Counselor Ossing.
So the Trailside Terrace one reads verbatim with this one, with the exception of Ash Street is replaced with Lincoln Street. It says, prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for use, or at such later time if authorized by the city engineer, the applicant shall repaint the crosswalk of the Aspet River Rail Trail on Ash Street in a manner approved by the city engineer. So
I
it's
wonder-
word for word, except Ash Street is,
I wonder if that was done because they knew they were going to redo Ash Street.
well, I think that's
So-
why the city engineer has a nickel in it, because he knows when streets are getting paved.
Yeah, where Lincoln Street, I don't think's going to get redone. I could be
Question,
wrong,
Madam
but
Chair, so as I read this then, it's to cover a situation in which the crosswalk has been repainted just prior to the completion of the building.
no, prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit.
No, but I mean, it may have already
Oh.
may have been painted relatively recently to the occurrence of the issuance of the occupancy permit. It doesn't make sense to have it repainted within 3 months or something. That's why you're authorizing the city engineer to do it after the occupancy permit as he deems fit,
Oh,
given the life of the first painting. I don't know, does that make sense?
Madam Chair, so not to complicate it, but it was just painted, I don't know, just a little while back. So
Yeah,
2
when they
years from now-
installed the lights, they
Yeah,
painted it.
2 years from now, it's gonna need to be repainted when they go
Yes,
for the
and I
occupancy
don't-
permit. So I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
If they know that that language is in here, they probably aren't going to, unless it really gets that bad, that fast, but your trucks are going to be, all right. Everybody's happy with number 8? Okay. Number 9 is the addition of the piece that I talked about from the site plan review, Cashman Street improvements. As part of the site construction, the traveled way of Cashman Street shall be widened to the extent possible along the site frontage instead of the addition of a sidewalk. Final details shall be approved by the city engineer. And this is one that concerns me, and so I had, city clerk has the plans up on the screen with the picture of what the building looks like on Cashman Street. He's got to scroll through it. My concern is that one right there, nope,
Right
back.
there, yeah.
If the plan is to have parking on Cashman Street on their side of the street, if there's no sidewalk, then when a person parks, they're going to get out the right-hand side of their car onto their grass.
You wouldn't be able to park there.
And then they have to walk all over their grass as they go. So I have an issue with no sidewalk. I guess I like the fact that he's trying to widen the street, but no sidewalk?
No, there is a sidewalk there.
But this says instead of the sidewalk. And I believe in discussions with the city engineer that when you go back to site plan, they're going to make the site plan have no sidewalk.
I think what they meant, so there was a space between the back of where the sidewalk would be and the property line, and we had proposed an extra wide sidewalk there, and they said rather than create an extra wide sidewalk, push the sidewalk back to the property line and make Cashman Street a little bit wider. So
Okay.
then- So the plans that you have in front of you show a sidewalk along Cashman Street, it was not illuminated.
Right,
Simply
which,
pushed to the property line and kept to a normal width of 5 feet rather than widening it out to 8 or 10 feet.
okay, because I don't think this has any measurements on it. And I don't know if simply changing this language to say the traveled way of Cashman Street shall be widened to the extent possible along the site frontage, keeping a sidewalk? Counselor Naven?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate site plan's work on this one, because this kind of gets to the crux of my main concern about the development, and that is, just kind of where it is and the fact that Cashman Street is so narrow. Parking, I think, is incredibly important here, especially with the extension of the rail trail as it's come down. I am ecstatic that the rail trail comes to Main Street. I think the way in which it makes its way down to Main Street leaves a little bit of a head scratch, but it comes the way it comes, and that's great. But I think in order to be able to safely have folks be able to utilize, the churches on Cashman and on Prospect Street, we need to make sure that, there is parking for people. Cashman is a very quiet street. It's going to have a nice little development that's centrally located. But, in the events of funerals on weekends and for 3 glorious, glorious days on Labor Day, when, half the city and surrounding towns come to visit, there needs to be some parking in the area. And so I want to make sure, I think for me, it's less about the sidewalk. I think the sidewalk's important, but more that we can actually guarantee that there's still going to be enough room for people to use the bike trail, people to safely navigate Cashman Street on times of high traffic, but then also be able to park. It's a very congested area. So I guess, for me, we can include that there remains a sidewalk. I just want to make sure that anything we do does not eliminate any possibility for additional parking in this area. And which does lead me to a question on this transition piece before you get to the driveway, the entrance to the driveway with the garage. That part where it bumps out further, will there still be able to be parking? Will you still be able to put cars in this, was it 60 feet?
Yeah, it happens it's about 200 feet. It happens.
The whole area is 200 feet, including the opening, right?
Yeah,
And
Okay.
what are you looking at one of the pages specifically, or the?
I'm looking at the lower level parking plan is
The
what I happen to
separate-
be looking at. It has the measurement on it, but
And that's it, you got it right there. Look at sheet C3, I think. Yeah, so that was just to transition where the curb line is and push it in closer to the property lines. It can't be abrupt, it's gotta be,
but that's cutting into Cashman, right? That's not cutting, that's gonna narrow the road
widening-
there?
That's widening Cashman, so that's going from where the
Okay.
existing curb line is,
Understood.
widening it out towards our property line.
Okay.
But that one still does show a sidewalk
Correct.
all the way around.
And
Okay.
now the sidewalk is pushed right up to the property line. So it makes Cashman Street about 5 or 6 feet wider.
Okay, and so you'll be able to park all the way, essentially, within reason to the entrance of the driveway while there's clearance
Correct.
space?
Yeah, once you're past a safe distance past the driveway.
So you
there'll
can
be
turn
plenty
in
of
and
room
out.
to park. That's correct.
So you're going to be able to get 3 or 4 cars parked there, well, maybe, but I think the church's bigger issue is the fact that they can't use this whole lot to park because there's going to be a building there. So 2 or 3 cars on the street isn't going to make that much difference, but
Well,
I
no,
hear your
but
point.
considering that, on days where there are funerals and whatnot, they have to park on the rail trail, I think, any bit would help. If we're gonna greenlight another 24 cars in the neighborhood,
Yes.
it'd be nice to have some parking. And it would be nice if, and I don't know how we do this, but you're gonna have 12 units and 24 spots, so I assume you're not gonna have anyone with 3 cars, but it would be nice to make sure that it's not just visitor parking that's on the street at all times, and that, neighborhood residents and people who are visiting the church can also use it.
Yeah, because I don't think anywhere in the city, street parking that we have only for residents, so it's going to be first come, first serve.
Yeah.
But I guess my concern is this language about the instead of the sidewalk, so I don't know if there's a way to leave it unclear and talk to the city engineer so he can clarify it. I want a sidewalk.
Is it possible
Be a
to?
narrow sidewalk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it impossible to say instead of a widened sidewalk?
Yeah.
Right, or we can
I
put
would
a
say with the-
standard sidewalk?
Right, instead of the extension of the existing sidewalk.
Instead of the,
So instead of an extended sidewalk?
Counselor Landers, I see you with your...
Yeah, I very much, I feel the way you do, Madam Chair, that the sidewalk is important there. I think what we have to look at, goes back to the site review committee there, what's the width of Cashman Street with a sidewalk, abutting their property? And then when you go across the street, that's the rail trail and a sidewalk. What I see now, people parking on the rail trail already for Sunday masses that I see. So it would be interesting to see what the width of the street is. I'm very conscious of that, because in my neighborhood, that was built 54 years ago, they just did over the sidewalks and the curbings in the street, and they narrowed the street by 6 feet. Yeah, they've been doing that in my neighborhood, that because they realized the streets were too wide. But now, I'm looking at this situation here, with a sidewalk, which would be on, the east side, and then you got the street, and, streets should be 32 feet, I think, but they won't be. That Cashman will never be 32 feet. But then the other sidewalk, you have the sidewalk and the rail trail. Is that right, Madam, Mr. President? You're down there all the time.
Madam.
Oh, Madam.
Counselor Ossing.
So listening to the comments, if everybody wants the sidewalk, just get rid of the word instead and just say maintaining the sidewalk. So they're gonna work the best they can to widen the street as much as possible with a sidewalk that the city engineer is gonna approve, right? I mean, is that's what you want, right? So get rid of the word instead of an additional sidewalk, just said maintaining the sidewalk, and let the city engineer decide what the sidewalk's gonna look like, and the developer's gonna get as much, as wide a road as possible, Because now if it gets too much sidewalk onto their property, then they run into the lot coverage issue that they've got to be mindful of. So, but the city engineer knows that, so he can let him take care of that.
Right, because I think we already got a copy from the building engineer with his markup of all of the city code. So the recommendation then, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. So with regards to the sidewalk, if anything changes, then it has to be ADA approved as well for handicapped accessibility. So now we may be locked into something that we'd have to have some feedback from the city engineer. I'm thinking,
There must be a width that's required for ADA. I know there's angles.
You have to have a minimum clear width of 36 inches. Typically, you make your sidewalks 5 feet wide so that it accounts for any street signs, hydrants, or any kind of
Obstructions.
obstruction. But I think that was the very intent of the site plan review. I think that something got misconstrued with the condition. The intent was never to eliminate that sidewalk. It was just to put a 5-foot sidewalk and push it back to the property line rather than creating a wider sidewalk there.
Okay, well, that's good to hear, and I don't know that I have been missing site plan
That's why
lately,
the
so,
revised plans, as you noted, show a sidewalk still. We didn't eliminate it.
all right. So then to go back to Counselor Ossing's suggestion, they shall be widened to the extent possible along the site frontage, maintaining a sidewalk and maintaining a sidewalk?
Retain.
Well, there is no sidewalk now.
There is a sidewalk.
Well, the design has a
Not in
sidewalk.
Cashman. This design has, yeah, but there is no existing.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Maintaining a sidewalk, and then the final plans will show where that sidewalk is and how wide it is? Along the site frontage, maintaining a sidewalk. Does that work for everybody? All right.
Madam Chair?
Sorry, Counselor.
No, I may have a
Navin.
question that'll show my ignorance on this issue, but, so what if we are taking out that, which I even think it makes sense, but if we're taking out maintaining the side, or, you know, we're including maintaining the sidewalk, what is the purpose of number 9? Like, yes, we want the road to be as wide as it can, but if it's maintaining a sidewalk and it's not gonna change that, what is?
Well, I think that keys in that they're trying to use some of their property to widen it, maybe,
I mean,
versus,
don't get me wrong, if we can include something that says, like, let's keep the road as wide as possible so we can have a sidewalk and it can have parking and it will still be a way, which I would very much like to hear the engineer's feedback on that to make sure that even with the standard sidewalk, we can still have parking and accessibility for the street, but I,
As part of that sidewalk.
if we're taking that out, and which I think is fine, because that was the plan of site committee, I don't understand the purpose of number 9. I don't know that it does anything.
well, I think it still keeps that they're trying to widen Cashman Street by taking some of their property, and it's not showing that on the plans that we have.
Okay.
If that's not,
Did you hear what the chair said?
do we need it in there? Do we need something? And I guess to me, as part of the site construction, that part's weird too, because you're gonna do site construction based on the plans. The traveled way of, is there, do you have a suggestion? Is the-
It's almost like it wants to read, instead of a widened sidewalk.
While maintaining a minimum, a
A minimum ADA accessible sidewalk is what I would say.
Instead of widening the sidewalk, you're right, not the addition of a sidewalk. I think, Mr. Salvo is correct. We were talking about widening a sidewalk, not adding a sidewalk or subtracting. So maybe instead of widening the sidewalk, it's as simple as changing the word addition to widening. See, because it says, the traveled way of Cashman Street shall be widened to the extent possible along side frontage, instead of the widening of the sidewalk. That makes a correlation between the sidewalk and the width of the street.
Oh, because your plan were,
Would have been to widen, would put a wide
so,
sidewalk.
but it's still, while maintaining a sidewalk, to me, then the width of that sidewalk is in the final plans. We don't need to have that in here.
Right, you can say, you know, acceptable to the city engineer, or
Yeah,
It's- Madam Chair, it says that now, final details shall be approved by the city engineer, so
right. I just want to have,
you want a sidewalk.
I want a sidewalk,
Yep,
so,
Just make it say it's got a sidewalk. I will acknowledge Counselor Naven, that
yeah, and
but again, site plan said that they wanted to look at it, so they wanted one final swing, because we all know the drawings get adjusted as projects get implemented. And it as a condition in this special permit has a little more leverage than just the plans itself.
right. But I know how we had the parking, or I won't go into that one. I'm going to get rid of as part of the site construction. Is that okay with everybody? And just have it be Cashman Street improvements. The traveled way of Cashman Street shall be widened to the extent possible along the site frontage while maintaining a sidewalk. Final details shall be approved by the city engineer or site plan review committee. I mean, he's part of that, so is that okay for everybody? All right. Then number 10 in here is the recording of the decision. What's not in here is the piece that was added onto the letter from Priscilla, the billboard. So she didn't add it into the draft because she wasn't sure of the language. And her suggested was a little confusing to me. So I think it just should say the existing billboard on the property is to be removed. No billboard will be allowed on the property. I mean, the solicitor can word it how he wants it, but Counselor Naven, you have better wording?
No, I'm not sure, better wording. I am curious to know on the timing of that, because I think that is something that many people who are both living in the area and driving down the street are going to be very excited to see happen as part of this project. Is it something that, from a construction standpoint, has to come down before construction begins, or is it, it does?
It does.
Okay. I was just going to suggest that
Well,
we
that-
put a time in it.
I wondered, because I know it just changed. There's a brand-new sign on there. So my guess is somebody
It's a
just,
month-to-month lease.
Okay.
Tendency it will.
so could we put in language that it comes down immediately? Or, I mean, I would assume you want to start
They're in demolition.
demolition phase? The existing billboard on the property is to be removed
In conjunction with the demolition of the existing structures.
in conjunction.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't remember from the public hearing, when is demolition anticipated to begin?
Well, it depends on when we get approval.
Well, let's assume that you're.
Yeah,
you're
from
gonna-
the,
let's
from the
assume
date the permit
Current
gets signed.
schedule is if you're going to vote it on the 27th of February finally,
Mhm.
then we have essentially 3-week appeal period. So, and then, then we could start working on building permit plans, how long it takes to get the building permit. I would expect that it would be construction in late spring, which would begin in late spring.
Would you be amenable to any sort of language that suggests that the billboard comes down within a certain period of time from the special permit? The only reason I ask is we have some existing special permits on the books in the city for developments that have hit the pause button, and it would be nice if that was something
You'd
that
like it done sooner rather than later, Counselor.
I
Okay.
would
Then
say 90 days
I don't see any-
after the execution of the
I don't see that being
special
contrary
permit.
to the will of the owner, so.
Yeah.
It might be
we'll
better if you can make it tied to the issuance of the building permit, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Within a certain timeframe of the issuance of the building permit, I think would be appropriate, because demolition should happen right after that.
But that's what you had said, though. Sometimes we do a special permit and there's never a building permit.
All right, pulled, fair enough.
Madam Chair?
No,
Counsel Perman?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate Counselor Naven's point. I do think if the billboard could come down quicker, then that would be preferred. It really, I think it's just sort of blight in the area. It would be nice to have that removed at an earlier interval.
So if we did it at some months after the special permit is approved?
That's fine, we're not, we don't,
Although I guess my concern is,
There's- Madam
You-
Chair, there's nothing legally enforced, I mean, we can have it, in special, just take it down tomorrow, but so they don't, then what happens? I mean, there's nothing we're gonna do about it till they take it down. I think the point you wanna make in the condition is, it comes down coincident with when you get the demolition permit, probably before you get the building permit. I'm not sure how they issue the permits, but you want it just tied to getting that.
I think
You're
you
right,
actually-
Council Naven,
you actually-
things stall. I've got 3 stalls right out here right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I can't get them to clean up what we already.
No, but
Right.
you, with all due respect, you did say that, at least if it's in the special permit, there's a little bit more leverage and a little bit of weight, and
I think that we need a permit to take it down, and that's typically what's done under a demolition permit. So if we got a demolition permit to remove the buildings, it makes sense to take the sign down at that time.
Same time.
Yeah, and I understand your point, Counselor Naven, but my concern is most of the people are buying property pending approval and then pending financing. So we could say 3 months after special permit, but if they don't own the property, they can't take it down.
Oh,
We own the property.
You do, okay,
Yeah.
well, for you, then that doesn't matter, but I guess I'm more comfortable with the demolition permit, which they can't do anything till that building there comes down. I'm sorry, Counselor Wagner?
I would add, I'm personally comfortable with tying it to demolition because I'd like to see it taken down safely, and so it feels like it's a big ask to move that expensive big equipment to come and just take the sign down and then come back and do, so when the equipment's on site, do everything correctly, take the building down, take the sign down, and so it feels like, it's been there forever, I'm excited to see it go too, but why not do it right?
Amen.
So are you okay with that, Counselor Naven?
no, but that's okay.
You're... All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Thank you.
Counselor Orem.
Thank you. I agree about the demolition, but with the presentation being made by the owners, if they know they're going to be tied up for some time, I hope not, then I would suggest they could show good faith effort and take out a separate demolition permit for the signage. So, word of thought for your consideration, if you know your full demolition permit may take longer. Maybe get the sign down as a gesture of your good faith to the city. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, we can certainly communicate that to the owner.
All right, so then we need to deal with the second sentence that she had, with just simply state that no billboards will be allowed on the property.
That's fine.
All right. I had another question about snow removal. Was that, and again, is that something we leave to site plan? This is a very tiny site. I don't see room to store snow. So my assumption is you're going to be required to remove it from site?
Well, the only place it would have to be removed is basically for the driveway going into the garage and the driveway accessing the spaces at the top of the site. That's simply going to be removed and taken away. It's not going to be stored there.
Okay.
Our client basically has a rental portfolio, so that's really part of his
The property.
operation.
The property manager will come and
Exactly.
plow the driveways and the sidewalk going around the property? Is everybody comfortable with that being dealt with at site plan? All right. Is there anything else that any members had that was not covered? Counselor Orem?
There was a lengthy discussion at our meeting. It's in the minutes that we have for the property back on the public hearing on November 21st. And I know and I think another counselor was questioning the whole situation on the parking on the Lincoln Street side. And I know Councilor Doucette, I believe, was curious about being able to see within that parking lot. I think you did resolve that with one of your plans about site access. But my question too is the danger of trying to take a left turn onto Lincoln Street from that parking lot. I don't know if you were planning to resolve that safety issue.
We would, the typical solution that I'm familiar with in that case is basically having a traffic commission establish a left or right turn only, depending on which direction you want the traffic to exit the site. and go in that direction. So if you don't, this is the north parking lot, right?
North, yes.
Parking on the, right.
Yeah, the north
So
one.
if you don't want the parking going across the flow of traffic, you want it to go with the traffic, then
Yeah.
it would be right turn only.
Okay, that's what I was hoping for. I mean, obviously, your residents will make note of it if it's not done, because if there's accidents, so hopefully there will be some consideration for
We
that.
can put a sign up on our site that
Yeah.
says right turn only.
Recommended right turn only. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from anybody that didn't get
Counselor Rowe?
covered? Counselor Perlman?
Was there any explicit language that was needed about that green space, or is that going to be for site plan to outline? I know we mentioned that it, it was kind of, I guess it's visible from this particular image, but if that was going to be public space, or if that had been solidified or would need to be clarified in this document.
My understanding, it wasn't going to be turned over to the city. It's still your property, but you were going to allow people to,
Well, we were offering to work with the city to develop a pocket park there, whether it be historical because of the area, and that was our offer. But yeah, we would retain the property, and I guess an easement or.
An easement,
would be
public
granted.
easement.
Public easement would be granted.
so is that something we probably should have in this, Counselor Ossing, our city clerk? If,
I'm just looking at the site plans decision, so bear with me.
We haven't really provided for public action on passive.
because I would think unless you put tables or benches or a picnic table, people are just going to be walking by. They're not going to stop and sit
Well,
there.
just that it
There's
would-
nothing to sit
It was
on.
more as a transition from the end of the rail trail to cross the street and continue. So it became a nodal point. So whether we wanted to do some sort of, plaque
Rest
statue.
area?
Yeah, it's like a point of repose, right? So, but we were offering it to work with the city to develop a public space. And, whatever committees you would like us to work with, we're willing to do that.
Yes, and Councilor Rowley, my thought was that I think that's really wonderful that that is something that we could put into the language to clarify and make sure that it is followed up on. So that was I didn't see it into the special permit
Yeah,
decision.
because I guess I didn't really remember it being discussed at site plan all that much, and it wasn't clear to me what your intention was when you talked about it, because I know I think even at the public hearing, it was pointed out that the rail trail really crosses the other side of the street. So somebody walking is going to go from the rail trail on Lincoln Street across from you, cross over along the church side. So now, why would they want to cross Cashman Street to get you to your corner unless there was a picnic table or a bench that they could sit at?
Yeah, originally, when the design started, it was the assumption the rail trail would continue. If you look at one of the renderings, I think it's the last rendering that shows how it aligns with the end of the rail trail. Yeah, right there. So you can see that at the end of the rail trail, really, you would walk directly onto that corner, had the crosswalk been on that side.
Yeah, except
If-
that you
if I
don't.
may-
You cross at an
If I
angle.
may.
Right.
Yeah, they've sort of redone Cashman maybe before that picture was taken, because now it's, you're closer to the church.
Yeah, if I can, I was just, from my experience of the rail trail, that is an area that people would access, and I have personally walked from that direction, so I do think it makes sense to clarify it in the language. And it could be more like, as determined by site plan committee, right? But that this would be something that is retained by the owners of the property to have that land, but that it would be accessible for public use, whether it's a bench or as determined by site plan.
Benches there, you're not putting anything that's going to be passive recreation. Right. I think that should be clarified.
So is this something you would need to be discussing more with?
I was just talking to our architect, who was the author of that plan creatively. I think we're not looking to have a picnic area. I mean, benches, I would say. People are using the rail trail. It could be literally a place where they stop and sit and just take in the environment, and then they go on their way. So it's more passive recreation than active. And so therefore, it would just be largely enhancing it with benches and other kind of plantings that would enhance that as a rest area. I think that's what we're talking about.
All right, so I like the idea. My concern is that some of the benches in the city have been vandalized. People are not very kind when they walk along the rail trail sometimes. I would hate to have your property destroyed, or the benches, or the fact that people are hanging out there. I mean, if you're willing to put the benches.
We just could leave it as a beautiful corner with, I mean.
Madam Chair, given the fact that this property will be very new in the area, and then the property across the street, I don't expect there to be that type of behavior, and particularly, there's lighting in the area. I really don't see that happening. I think there's a lot of development specifically to make this area more accessible, and I haven't seen any issues, so I wouldn't make that a deterrent for why we couldn't have this, to continue to beautify an area that we are hoping to revitalize.
Madam Chair.
Councilor
Sorry.
Orm. I'm sorry. Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I would agree with that, and also I imagine with, quite a beautiful-looking building development going up, and if this is part of a larger portfolio that the owner and developer has, as part of their maintenance, I imagine that if they're going to develop and maintain this parcel, that would become standard. So even if there was an unfortunate incident of, spray paint or whatnot, I imagine that, a maintenance crew would come out and take care of that. But if we want to add language that, make sure that happens, I'd be happy to make that motion to amend to include that in the permit. Something like, oh, sorry, Mr. President, go ahead.
When you're done.
I was just going to suggest language, so you go right ahead.
Madam Chair, so if council noticed there's a picture of what in the, a bench.
The bench, yes, the bench.
So if you want to have number or location of benches in the pocket park to be finalized by site plan. I mean, if you want, that's simple. I mean, because I'm not going to say put 10, 2, 1, I don't know. I mean, that's not,
But
I'm
by
not
the
going to argue
pocket-
they're not going to sit there.
But you said pocket park, so you're talking on their property, not on this side.
On the corner there, but
Okay, and I don't know that I like the language pocket park, because to me, it
But that's
then
what's on the
sounds.
drawing. I mean, I'm
a
just
park
using
is
what's on the-
city property.
not
It's their
city
property, so
property.
unless they're going to do an easement to the city, which it didn't sound like they wanted to do, it's,
I mean, it could be as simple as the developer will work with the city to dedicate and maintain a space to be enjoyed by the public, to be, with details finalized by site plan review. Right,
Yeah.
that way the standards are what the standards should be and whatnot, but I think what is important is that the space is going to be dedicated and that it will be maintained.
If I may, I agree with that. I don't think you have to have it completely outlined in this particular document. I think you could indicate the corner that you are referring to so that it is clear, but I do think it's important to have it in this document. Otherwise, it looks like it doesn't exist.
right. And I guess I could work with the solicitor and Mr. Morris to take your language and turn it into something in here, because it's got to go to legal anyway. And I see your hand, Council Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That would be my concern. It feels, is it really a condition of the special permit? And if we put the language in, then does that open the door to this needing to be more official? And are we talking about then it feels like that opens up a legal morass where this is a really kind gesture. Can it be done just through like site plan? Like, I feel like the more language we put in, the more formalized we make this, we're opening the door to make it much more complicated. And that may be a conversation, at least with the city solicitor first. I don't know. It feels like we're complicating this really kind gesture unnecessarily.
I guess in our original intent was assuming that the rail trail was going to be on that side. It made sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense now. If what you're saying, they come across to the church side, and that would be a continuation, so maybe that becomes an unused space.
Yeah, I know
The original intent was that the rail trail was going to continue straight.
Yeah, because the whole idea of continuing it down was to get people not to stop at that corner, but to keep going all the way downtown. So why would you stop there if you're riding the rail trail and you need to go 2 more blocks to get downtown to
Especially if
have
the
lunch?
crosswalk has been shifted.
Yeah, and
Okay, so maybe it is something that was practical at one point.
Madam Chair.
Given the way that's actually been constructed, it isn't anymore.
Councilor Navin.
So I actually feel like I'm the curmudgeon tonight. It's a fair point. It is not where the rail trail goes. If you are coming off a run and you're not wanting to go all the way down to Main Street so that you don't have to come back up the hill on Prospect Street, as some of us don't want to do, you may want to enjoy that. And it's not hard, as we've pointed out, to cross Cashman 90% of the time because it's a pretty quiet street. So crossing one street and then crossing the other, if you're someone who just ran or rode 6.5 miles, is probably not an insane thought. The other point I want to make is, the council just approved another special permit for 200+ units, and west of that, the Armory is being renovated with 13 new apartments, and we have the Coffee Loft, and we have a tremendous amount of revitalization. The city just spent $2 million of state funds on a grant to redo the street. It's not just about the rail trail. This corridor is being revitalized completely, and our intent is to develop it and to continue to make this a place that people want to visit. There's a commercial spot going in diagonally across the street. I think we should want people to be in this area. So if this is an offer made by the developer who wants to build 12 units and have a nice anchor in the city, I don't think we should let it go.
I guess I like, but to me, that picture beautifies the corner, and to me, that's a big part of this project and why I like it, because it does fix it up. But you now add benches there, somebody riding their bicycle, where are they going to put their bike? They're going to throw it on their grass? They're going to stop somewhere and pick up a sandwich, and they're going to eat it sitting at a bench there. Where are they going to put their trash? Now they have to have a trash can sitting on the corner of their
We're
property?
going to have like 6 trash cans across the street at the brand-new entrance to the rail trail. I mean, there's, okay.
But I mean, and I understand your point of view because you thought that's where the rail trail was going, and not understanding that the idea was to have people cross on the church side. And so maybe that, if you hadn't even brought that up, we would never have gone down that route. Councilor Landers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quite honestly, I don't see putting benches where near that hydrant adds anything to the project. For a couple of reasons. I don't think people are going to come down the rail trail or come down Lincoln Street and cross over there to sit on a couple benches, because they will continue down the rail trail, by the church, and if they want to go downtown or turn around. So I know if I was involved doing this project, I wouldn't want a pocket park, I wouldn't want benches, because you got 12 units there, and you're gonna have 24 people at least maybe living there. Let that be their grounds. But the biggest thing is, I don't like the crossover that you'd have to take to go sit near the hydrant. So I think the last 5 or 10 minutes, we've talked about doing something, picnic benches or chairs or something like that. And I don't think it adds anything to the project, and I don't think people need it.
Committee members, where are we? I know it's almost 8:45. Did I see, Councilor Perlman, did you have your hand?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just would reiterate that, we spend a lot of time talking about the sidewalk, right? I think people are still going to be pedestrians, and they're going to want a place to even just pause, whether it's their residence or not. I mean, we're trying to discourage people to have cars, but if we're not giving them a space to even be a pedestrian, I just think it's a nice addition. Maybe it's something that can be worked out with site plan, and maybe doesn't have to be quantified in this document, but should be looked into. I think it's lovely to have it as something that people can access. It's, unfortunate when there are developments like this that feel like people who are not living in it can never appreciate the benefits of. I do think people access that entry point. They're not going to follow the direct route. We say Cashman is more quiet. They probably want to walk that way. Maybe someone from the church wants to sit there periodically, or an elderly person who wants to cross the street. I just think it's something I wouldn't let go of. I do recognize the concerns that were raised, but I think it is a nice gesture and something that should still remain under consideration for the committee. I'm not a voting member, so I do understand that, but it just feels like a nice thing for residents, and I don't think people are going to spend there all day there. They'll probably put their bag on there, grab something, keep going. It just offers an opportunity for a pause and stop, and there's not a lot of places in this area with the benches until you start going onto the rail trail, so it allows for that.
And as we were shown before, there is a bench right across the street. So to me, the sidewalk was a necessity. The benches are nice, but I don't consider them a necessity. Councilor Wagner?
I agree. Hopefully something will develop, but I wouldn't support at this point complicating this by adding it, making it a special permit requirement. It has a place, discussion, site plan. I think something will develop, but I don't think it's necessary to put it in the special permit.
Could be one of those details that get resolved at subsequent site plan review.
Yeah, or I guess there's nothing that says you can't just put some benches there and people will figure out that maybe they're public, but, or you could talk at site plan review to see if there was something more about that whole train part that might get missed at the other development that you could put there.
So it's my understanding, you vote the special permit, then we have to go through site plan review process, which they're separate. So I think as I hear people speak, they, especially Councilor Wagner, that it makes sense then to not put it in the special permit, but leave it to the subsequent site plan review
See
to
what-
determine whether it's appropriate or not.
Okay. I'm okay with that. Counselor Landers? Counselor Navin, does that work for you?
Yep.
I know you're, again,
I mean, so you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I don't think it complicates it by adding a condition to the special permit. I think that it's nice to have. I think it's a nice offer that's been made, and I think it's something that we should do. But, you know, even if we include something that, you know, site plan shall review the petitioner's, offer, including benches, something. I just think we shouldn't let it fall off the sled. But
so to have
I can
something,
count, so.
something not specific, but something that the site plan, if site plan says no, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like, you have language? Site plan shall review petitioner's offer of including bench on their property at Lincoln and Cashman Street to see if the public use of this area is feasible. I'm just reading this from our assistant's verbiage. Do you want me to read it again?
Yes, please, I'm sorry.
Site plan shall review petitioner's offer of including bench on their property at Lincoln and Cashman Street to see if the public use of this area is feasible.
Perfect.
Does that work?
Works for us.
Madam Chair, just to,
I'm sorry, I was going to, Counselor, you're okay? All right, Counselor.
no, determining what site plan review has for their input, if it doesn't seem to be deemed possible, is it possible that they could maybe have additional benches on the actual rail trail? So any improvements at that end, if it didn't seem to be feasible on the site plan review?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to lose that opportunity of being able to have benches, because the whole idea is to revitalize the area. But I am focused on that corner, like you said, Chair Roby, that is a real focal point. So I don't want to lose that opportunity, but if it's feasible to go forward with even any kind of input on benches going on the rail trail would be nice.
Well, I think on the other side, the city's going to own that piece, and it's going to be parking, and then there's already in existence a bench that I think would stay on the rail trail. It's far enough down, the one that was shown on the drawing. But benches are always welcome, I would think. Petitioner's offer of including a bench on their property. Would you be okay with or on the city property? I don't know if we'd want a bench in that parking lot, but
We're not adverse to basically installing, making a contribution or whatever, installing stuff on city property. It's sort of akin to our dealing with the crosswalk, which isn't on our property, but it's akin to the development. I think the benches, as Councilor Irish has suggested, is something that's a reasonable extension of the site plan.
okay. So site plan shall review petitioner's offer of including
Counselor Roby, to help with the language, you could say to include benches, location to be determined per site plan or something vague so that it allows for that flexibility.
Benches,
Chair Roby?
Counselor Ossing.
I'll just remind, this is private property. It's not public property. So I'm not sure we should be the ones deciding where they want to put benches on their property, because now you're inviting the public onto their property, and that's not, I mean, personally, I think that's a bad idea.
I was kind of trying to make that point. I think originally if there was talk of an easement, I don't see you doing an easement now, so,
Madam Chair?
Counselor Oram.
I agree 100% with President Ossing. It is not public property. If someone got injured on that property and you invited them in, what's the appearance? I mean, I say it's a great idea, but it's their property. They can decide what they wish to do. And I'll leave it at that. I agree with Council President Ossing.
And maybe upon review, they would see it's not feasible. I don't know, but I would hope that that would be legal's opinion, that it's not feasible. So is this really language we want to add in?
I mean, look, we're not the experts, right? We always say that we defer to, the experts that we have working for us in the city. So you know what, if they can figure it out, if the solicitor thinks that it's reasonable and they come to it, I think it's great.
So you would like this in here?
I think the language makes sense, but I am one of 4 tonight and one of 11 on every other night, so.
Well, we haven't really taken an individual vote on all of the conditions, so, I mean, I guess I don't have a horrible objection to it. I would hope that they would say it's not feasible because it's private property, and unless they're doing an easement to make it public, and maybe even the solicitor would say this isn't language he would approve of. Councilor Wagner?
I'm in agreement with that too, which is why I said at the beginning, it's once you start putting things in writing, that opens the door. So are we saying now, this is public space, which is really private space, so the first person who wipes out and gets hurt, who gets sued? Is it the property owner? Well, we said the city could use it, so now are they suing the city? When you put it all down in writing, it gets to be a complicated morass, and the next thing you know, a fence is going to go up and no one's going to be able to use it. The reality is, if there's no fence around it, people are going to sit in the grass. Maybe it would be lovely if there'd be a bench. People who live there could sit in the bench. I think this will happen, but we're really creating a problem by putting it in writing, and I agree with Councilor Ossing. I think it's a mistake to formalize it for something we don't own that isn't also a critical part of this project. That's, different, talking about the sidewalk, worrying about parking, safety. There are things to put in that make sense in a special permit. This is a nice gesture that we're complicating unnecessarily.
I would have to agree. So doesn't sound like there's agreement among the committee to have it in there. I guess I didn't really hear from Councilor Landers. Do you have an opinion on?
Quite honestly, all right, I wouldn't sit on a bench on that corner myself. There's no value to it. What are you looking at? You got a couple of youngsters with you or something, or you got their tricycle or their carriage or something. That isn't a place that you would want people to sit. Plus, personally, my problem is nobody steps on my lawn. I'm not sure if the owner of that property, what if a couple of kids decided to have a little game of tag football there or something? You don't want that. So I don't think we should even be spending the last 15 minutes discussing it, because I don't think it belongs there.
I'll never sit on your property.
All right, so it's getting way later than I thought this would go. I thank everybody's indulgence. I'm going to say that discussion is done. Is there anything else anybody wanted? Are we ready to close this up?
I think we should wrap it up.
Anybody ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair. So I move to approve the special permit as amended, because we still have some amendments, right? So as
Yes,
amended, we need to
as
say that,
amended.
right? To move to approve with the current amendments we've already discussed. Is that?
All right. So Council Council Wagner has moved to approve the special permit with the amended conditions. Is there further discussion? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and patience. I will report this out on Monday.
13th.
Asked to suspend, so this can be referred to the solicitor to be put in proper form, and then it will be on the next agenda after that for a vote.
Wonderful.
All right. Is there a
I want to
motion
thank you all
to
very much
adjourn?
for your time. I think this is, as I said in my opening remarks when I made the presentation, I've been doing this for a long time, but this is why I tell my kids that what I do isn't really work, because it's enjoyable. Thank you. You make it enjoyable.
All right, I need a motion to adjourn from someone. Nobody? Nobody wants to?
Motion to adjourn?
Councilor Wagner, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? And we are adjourned at 8.
Exciting project.